One of the most colossally obvious statements in modern life is that American universities are hubs of leftism. We frequently discuss that universities are woke, but we don't often discuss why they are woke. Today, I am going to be giving you my arguments as to how I think that happened. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hey everyone, welcome to Timeless, the show where I talk about subjects through the lens of timeless, eternal principles. Welcome to all of you new and old. It really is a joy to be with you. For those of you who are new to this channel, I just want to tell you briefly that I segment this show into two parts. I have a segment that's called Julie Noted, and I talk about news, the more timely subjects of the day. And then this, what you're watching now, is obviously called Timeless, where I talk about more timeless, eternal subjects, as I like to say. And they range from a lot of different things. I have talked about art, music. I had a magician on the show. I talked about owls one episode. I'll do these history shows. I did some on Iran and India and how the war in Ukraine got started. So it really is a show that deals with a lot of different subjects and above all else, tries to impart some wisdom. So thank you for being here. Just a reminder to hit the subscribe button down below so that I can keep doing what I'm doing and you can stay notified every time I post a new video. As you know from the introduction, we are talking about the wokeization of the American university. You know, you look at old footage of American universities like Harvard, Princeton, and Yale. If you look at like the Harvard-Yale game from 1960 or 1970 or 1950, if there's even footage that goes that far, I think there is. It seems like reels from a glorious American old movie. It just seems like such a different life, a different world from the one that we exist in now. If you look at those old Harvard-Yale footage, you see people in the stands. Men look like men, women look like women. Women are wearing these modest but beautiful, appropriate for their femininity dresses, and men are wearing these collared shirts and they look happy and they're cheering, and you see couples picking each other up, holding hands. You see footage of Harvard Yard and people walking through with their books and professors with their spectacles. You see the American flag flying in the background, and it just evokes this element of nostalgia. And it seems like a really healthy, happy, and quintessentially American time. Fast forward to today, 2023, the scene is totally different. You see a lot of students in the stands at a football game or walking through the quad of the university, and you really can't tell if they are men or women. You see a lot of dyed hair, a lot of Birkenstocks, a lot of nose rings. You don't see a lot of American flags. You may see some BLM flags or pride flags or Ukraine flags, but not very often an American flag. Another thing that I noticed when I was in college is the prevalence of computer stickers or badges or pins that are put on backpacks at universities. This fascinated me. I would go into class and you'd look around at the table, and everyone, and I mean everyone, would have these computers, and you could barely see that the back of it was a computer because it was so filled with stickers that had political slogans. Vote, vote, vote was one of the most common that I saw. Another one was row, row, row your boat, and row was spelled R-O-E, which is, of course, a nod to abortion. There would be another one that said P word grabs back, fight the patriarchy, climate change is real. And it's just so interesting because you see nowadays in American universities that people are wearing a certain identity of their demographic, of their political opinions, but you can't tell that they're Americans, and you can't tell that they are at an American university. I am someone who likes to make the world understandable. It is not enough for me to just understand that something is occurring. I want to figure out why. And especially with regard to something like the transformation of the American university, because it has happened so quickly. So that is the subject of today. Why and how has this evolution occurred? A quick note before we go on about the importance of a university. This came to mind just now as I am sitting here on the air speaking with you. If you think about the health of a country, the way to gauge a health of a country, people tend to point to things like the country's infrastructure. You know, first world countries tend to have better airports, better highways, better streets than third world countries. You look at government institutions. You look at certain freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association. You look at if the country is engaging in wars. There are all these kind of metrics to be able to gauge the health and the development of a civilization. One of the biggest ones that we don't always discuss, but it is, I would say, in the top 3 of those ways to gauge the health of a civilization, is the university. Think about it. There is almost no more important institution in a country than its university. Why? Because that is the place that the country has created and designated to raise and create the future leaders of that country. If you look at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, again, I know I said those 3 in the beginning of the show. The reason why I'm bringing them up is because it's relevant to tell you that I went to Harvard. I graduated from Harvard in 2022. And so I know a lot about Harvard, and I know a lot about those other schools, mainly through the football games that I went to. But if you look at Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, for instance, alongside other American universities, those universities were founded on religious principles. Harvard was founded by Puritans in the 17th century who wanted to create a place that would inculcate in pupils Puritan virtues. And as Harvard and these other institutions have gone on, over centuries, that has been the purpose, to create a citizenry, not just to give people facts and knowledge, but really develop young people, young adults, into full-fledged leaders of that country, of that civilization, to carry forth the baton of civilization and advance it. We have so lost that idea of the American university now. It's not a place where you are tutored in virtue, tutored in leadership. It's turned into something completely different. So the way to gauge the health of a civilization is to look at how they are training their future leaders. And by that metric, boy, has America gone down in its stature. Let's go on to that. I'm going to give you 3 arguments today as to why I think this evolution from non-woke to woke has occurred. And like many things, it's a cocktail of reasons. There are a lot of different ingredients thrown in there as to why this happened. You can't just reduce it to one thing. By the way, this is totally off topic, and I don't even know why I'm saying it to you. I make a really good cocktail with 3 ingredients. Can you guess those ingredients, Sean? Lime is one of them. Vodka is another. What do you think the 3rd ingredient is? It's a really good cocktail. Cheesy poofs. No. So that would be an interesting cocktail. Honey. Just a little timeless drink, I guess, to tell you at home. And if you want a low-calorie, really good drink, make that Julie drink. It's lime juice, vodka, or tequila, whichever one you want, and honey. And the honey is the sweetener. And so you feel like you're getting this really nice cocktail that doesn't taste like crap, and you're getting buzzed, but you're not getting super caloric. Anyway, I guess I like the number 3. In my cocktails and my reasoning, I like to give you 3 things. So today I'm going to give you 3 reasons for the wokeization of the university. Where do you think I learned how to make the cocktail, by the way? University. Above anything else, colleges teach you how to drink and how to make really good drinks on a little, only few ingredients. Number 1, I think this is actually the biggest reason, and it sets the table, if you will, for what has come. Over the past 40 years, the audience at the American university has changed. The student population has changed. And as the audience has changed, the reason for existing and the things taught at the university have evolved. And the biggest way that the audience has changed is that it has become international. Reason number one for this wokeism is the internationalization of the university. Allow me to explain. According to the United States State Department, in the 2021 to 2022 school year, nearly 1 million students all across the United States enrolled in American universities were not from the United States of America. That is pretty staggering. 1 million students. Think about it. We have 340 million people living in this country. There are 16 million undergraduates total in the country. 1 million out of that 16 million are foreign. That's a sizable proportion. The Georgia Institute of Technology, which is one of the biggest universities in the United States, enrolled 8,040 foreign students in 2021 to 2022. That was up from 42% from the prior year. And let's pause for a moment. These statistics that I'm giving you are post-pandemic. There were a lot of travel restrictions, international travel restrictions during the pandemic. So it's really a staggering thing that this international enrollment at the university, at American universities, has proliferated even after and perhaps during those international restrictions where it was much harder for foreign students to come to the United States. I'll give you another stat. According to the Institute of International Education, they took a survey of 630 schools and they showed that the total international enrollment in the United States rose by 9% from 2021 to 2022. International students at U.S. schools contributed to $33.8 billion to the U.S. economy in the 2021-2022 school year. A lot of those foreign students, above anything else, are coming from a particular country. Can you guess? China. According to ICE data from the year 2020, we, the United States, award the highest number of Chinese students with higher education visas than any other country on earth. But America is totally systemically racist. We hate non-white people. We want to create this utopia of whiteness and white supremacy here in the United States. Give me a damn break. We award the highest number of student visas to China, a non-white country. And by the way, China is our biggest adversary. They steal billions of dollars annually in our intellectual property. They just opened a spy base on Cuba to spy on our military bases here in the United States. They already spy on about 150 million Americans through apps like TikTok and WeChat. They are infiltrating into American media, into American schools. And just to boot, they have bought off our President of the United States and his son, Hunter Biden. That is another duly noted episode you should watch. But again, we're such an awful country. We give all these foreign visas to a non-white country, which also happens to be our biggest adversary. In 2020, we gave 382,000 student visas to Chinese foreign students alone. That is close to twice the number of the second place country, India, which gave about 200,000 foreign visas to Chinese students, and over 5 times as many as the third place country, South Korea, which gave about 68,000 student visas, okay? So I'm not gonna make the argument that all these influx of Chinese students, they're bringing communism over from China and they're infiltrating the American university. That's not my point. But now that I've said it, could be a possibility. And that is one of the main impetuses, one of the main kind of strategies of communist China. They want to infiltrate into American institutions and bring their principles to America in an effort to tear Western civilization and America down. That is not a secret. The point I am bringing up here about the internationalization of the university is that as the audience has become less American and more international, the university in turn has shifted its teachings to become less American and more international. There has been this idea, and this has really started in 1980 going forward, that it is imperialist for American universities to teach about Western civilization because they increasingly have a population of students and faculty which may not be from Western civilization. We saw this with Stanford University. Stanford was the one that kicked off this war on Western Civ requirements. A lot of colleges and universities used to require you to take courses on Western civilization. Now, barely any, maybe Hillsdale College does, but barely any do this anymore. In 1988, there was this famous cultural war at Stanford when Stanford got rid of its Western Civ requirement for freshmen. And it was, of course, because all of these students went to the streets of Stanford and started protesting with the famous chant, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go." My counter to them is, "Hey, hey, ho, ho, you have got to go. Western Civ is here to stay. You're in an American university. This is Western civilization. If you want to come here and study, good for you. We should allow international students." Some of my best friends from Harvard are international. I really do, in its truest sense, in its best sense, believe in diversity and exposing American students and international students to different people from different walks of life. But again, if you're going to a university in a country, that country has every right to teach the principles of its civilization. If Americans went to college in France or went to college in Germany or went to college in China or anywhere, would we begrudge those countries for teaching the principles of their civilizations? Of course not. So why in turn are we doing this self-flagellating, self-apology kind of thing where it's wrong for us to teach about the United States? This is huge though. As the audience for the university has changed, what has been being taught has changed. Accordingly, the university, because they have brought in so many international students and because universities have expanded, if you look at the numbers of universities, they used to have a couple hundred students. Now these universities are enormous. They have thousands and thousands of students that are enrolled, thousands and thousands of faculty that are enrolled. As these universities have expanded, they have kind of become everything to everyone. Take Harvard. Again, I'm not trying to pick on Harvard. I actually loved Harvard. I was only there for freshman and senior year because of, that thing called COVID, the lockdowns. I missed my entire junior year and half of my sophomore year. But while I was there, I loved it. I'm not trying to pick on it, but it is the school I know best. So of course, I'm going to come forth to you with the knowledge of what I know best. Harvard has a law school. It is a business school. It has an undergraduate school. It has a divinity school. It has a design, art, and architecture school. I'm probably forgetting some, but there are a lot of, medical school. There are a lot of postgraduate schools at Harvard. Additionally, so many different departments. Again, not confined to Harvard. This is everywhere. It's no longer history, economics, science, English, kind of the basic 4 or 5 that someone would go and study. Now you have like gender studies, racial studies, algae studies departments. You have seen these universities just expand and expand and expand. So as they have become everything to everyone, they've kind of also become nothing, because the seed, the genesis, the whole point of the university has been evaporated. It used to be a place that taught you how to be an American, created by and created for Americans. And now it's international, it's all these different subjects, it's a lot of different things, but it sure as hell isn't teaching principles of America and of Western civilization. A final note on this. There is this great author, love this guy, Roger Scruton. I always say his name incorrectly, I will admit. It's either Scruton or Scruton. I'm sure Mr. Scruton will forgive me because I am praising his work so highly. And he has this great argument about Western civilization and why Americans and people in Western civilization ought to learn about it and ought to protect it. He puts the merits of Western civilization aside, and obviously there are so many. That's why you should study it, because it has created by far the most just, free, equal system to ever exist in the world. Of course, there have been faults, there have been great ways that Western civilization has not lived up to its ideals, but by far Western civilization has created as close to a perfect situation as can be in human life. But Roger Scruton puts the merits aside, and he says, you should love Western civilization solely because it's yours. It was the civilization that you were born into. Just as you love your home, your mother, your father, your car, your teddy bear that you've had since you were 5 years old because it's yours, you ought to love your civilization because it's yours. That is not a bad thing, to have kind of a blind love and blind loyalty to the place that you came from. Again, I give an alternative example. Let's look at the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran, in addition to China, is one of the most savage places on earth. It is run by evil, corrupt, misogynistic, dictatorial, tyrannical, insert whatever horrible adjective you can, people. I mean, it's awful. The age of criminal responsibility for women is much lower than men. Women have to wear hijabs. They are killed sometimes, as the case with Masa Amini, for even letting their hair show through their hijab. If a woman is raped, she has to, if she goes to court, she has to bring in 2 male witnesses in order for the court to even hear her allegation. The place is just awful. But there are many people who live in Iran, and there are many Persians who love Iran, even though the government is so awful. Do you blame those people for loving Iran? No, of course not. They love Iran because it's their country. They love it because they're Persian. It's what they were born into. That's not a problem. And so why, again, is it different with us? We actually have a really good situation. We actually have things to be proud of. But even if we don't like our government, etc., we should love our civilization because it's ours. And American universities should love the principles of America and teach the principles of America because that is where those buildings have been planted. So that's reason number 1. The internationalization of the university has shifted the whole ethos of the university away from Western Civ, away from America, and opened up to all these new avenues. Reason number 2, novelty and critique. Novelty and critique. American universities and higher education in general love those 2 things, novelty and critique. See, I repeated it 3 times. I told you I love the number 3. When I was in high school, and certainly when I was in college, I noticed this even early on. When I would sit down in history class or English class to write an in-class essay, the prompt would always have something to do with asking me to make an intervention, to critique something. Critique how Nathaniel Hawthorne uses imagery of sin in the Scarlet Letter. Make an intervention as to how America may have pursued a different path in the Vietnam War. It was always take this thing, deconstruct it, analyze it, and really implicitly the idea is to tear it down. That is what academia is all about. If you look at people who are professors and they put out all of these research papers, literally in order to stay in their professorship, they have to be coming up with new ideas. They have to be critiquing something in order to keep their post. There's no such thing as a professor that just writes academic papers about the need to preserve something. Academia, at least to me, lends itself to progressivism, to leftism, to wokeism, because in academia are these impulses to come up with something new and to critique something. I cannot remember a time, and I'm very grateful for my education. I certainly have qualms with it, but there were many wonderful parts of my education. But I can't remember a time that a teacher ever asked me to defend what exists, to make an argument for preserving something. It is always to make an argument to change or intervene or otherwise alter something. I remember sitting in English class and you have to get your participation points. And everyone is like trying to figure out what new thing they can say about the book and raise their hand and get those participation points. And they're not going to praise something that they see happening in the book. They're going to make some argument about, you know, the way that the author could have done something better or the social commentary that the author is trying to make. And so when you are so used to approaching your academic life through this lens of, I'm going to come up with something new and I'm going to critique, you take that into your everyday life. And think about, what is wokeism? What is leftism? It is novelty and critique. Look at this transgender cultural in vogue phenomena that we are seeing, where people are saying that there are 38 different genders and gender is fluid. That's new. That's a new idea. It's upending the old understanding of what gender was, and it's a critique. It's a critique of what existed. Look at the defund the police movement. Look at the climate change initiatives. I mean, you can literally insert so many of these new in vogue woke things, and those two ingredients are in there, novelty and critique. Just for a little fun and to prove my point, I did some research before this episode of reading to you some, or finding the titles of some academic papers that both professors and students have written. You could not make this up. If you went on ChatGPT and you said to ChatGPT, come up with the most absurd sounding article or essay title, ChatGPT could not do a better job than what I am about to read to you, okay? And I remember this, by the way. I, senior year, was debating whether or not to write a history thesis. I was a history major at Harvard, and in order to get magna or summa distinctions on your diploma, you have to write a thesis. And so I wanted the magna or summa. I had good grades, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll try to write a thesis. And so I went to the history department's thesis meeting, the introductory meeting. And there were all these students sitting around, and the instructor got up and said, I would love for each of you to, let's go around, and I'd love for each of you in just a minute to give us an idea of what you think you want to write your thesis about. And she said, I know everyone's in the early stages, nothing is set in stone, but tell us what you think you might want to talk about. And this experience alone is what convinced me not to write the thesis. People went around and the stuff they said was actually insane. It was so random. It made absolutely no sense. I remember this one girl, she was like, I am really interested in exploring the intersectionality between race and feminine understanding of gender among people who were practicing witchcraft in 17th century rural Guatemala. Like, what? How could you come up with that? And it's because at the university, the terrain has already been walked on. People have to find these new things to write their dissertation papers on so that they can win awards, or their articles on so that they can get tenure at the university. So they come up with this wacko stuff to fuel the novelty and critique university industrial complex. Let me read you some titles. This is written by professors. Optimizing the sensory characteristics and acceptance of canned cat food. Use of a human taste panel. That was written by one professor at a university. Let me go to another one written by a professor. This is their big, they spend the university's money, they spend their time, their energy, this is their whole career publishing these academic papers. Effects of cocaine on honeybee dance behavior. I told you, ChatGPT could not have come up with something better. That was published in the Journal of Experimental Biology. The booty call, a compromise between men's and women's ideal mating strategies. That actually seems more legit. But the fact, again, that this is an academic paper is just unbelievable, okay? Now I'm going to read to you some recipients of the Harvard Hoops Prize. Again, I'm not trying to pick on Harvard. It's just what I know best. I know some people at Harvard who won the Hoops Prize. The Hoops Prize is like the big prize that's awarded to people who write the best theses. And Harvard picks like maybe 70 students from different departments and gives them $5,000 and awards them with this prize. Let me just read to you some of the titles of the theses that won the Hoops Prize this past year at Harvard, okay? Transgender Rome. That was one of them. Transgender Rome. This guy won $5,000 and the highest honor at Harvard. This one is the best, the absolute best. Ready? Again, Hoops Prize, $5,000, highest award. His project is entitled, The Role of Juvenile Shank Re-Expression on Autistic-like Cognitive Flexibility Deficits in Male Mice. What? What? I'm reading that one more time. The role of juvenile shank re-expression on autistic-like cognitive flexibility deficits in male mice. $5,000. I'll give you two more just for fun. This book written by a professor at ASU, Arizona State University, The Female Fantastic, Gendering the Supernatural in the 1890s and the 1920s. And then another one is Meat-Splaining the Animal Agriculture Industry and the Rhetoric of Denial. Need I say more about the novelty and critique point? It has a home in academia and it fuels progressivism, because that is exactly, literally by definition, is what progressivism is. Now moving on to the third and final reason that I would like to give for why and how I think these universities have gotten woke is that at American universities nowadays, there is this symbiotic relationship between students and faculty in which both can live in a kind of fantasy world and never grow up. The university has become a haven, literally a safe space, a safe haven from real life, where people can go and delay having to go out in the real world. Different rules, different standards, a different life applies to them. Going to college is a really fun thing. Let me tell you, I just graduated from college a year ago. Being in college is a lot more fun than being out of college, because you can drink on a weeknight and you can, choose to have a 1 p.m. class that you can roll up to hungover. You don't have to pay rent. You live in a dorm. You get fed. You get, all these advisors, an academic advisor, a psychological advisor to help you through your life. You get to party on the weekends. You get to just delay being an actual adult, paying rent, keeping a job, being a real person, getting married, having kids, and finding meaning. You can just kind of live in this safe space. And it's the same thing for professors. There are so many spots now at universities that administrators hold. And again, the names sound like crazy random word generator names. There's the head of diversity, equity, inclusion. There's head of, administrator of safe space resource allocation. There's the administrator of equitable food and lunch options. I mean, Heather McDonald actually has a book where she lists all of the administrative names at some universities, and it's just crazy. And that's a way for adults to avoid real life. That's the way for adults to avoid having real, actual, legit, consequential jobs in which they are actually doing work. Think about how great it must be to be the head of diversity, equity, and inclusion at one of these universities. You get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to show up and concoct BS that the university is white supremacist and holds all of these homophobic, transphobic, anti-intersectional, bigoted ideas, and you just get paid and you get glorified, and it's just this safe, fun haven escape from real life. Universities are never Neverland. And the problem now that we're seeing, and this is very, very real, I even flirted with this idea when I was in college, is that the university life has become so good that people want to continue their education. They don't want to just stop at undergrad. They want to go to law school and then get their master's and then get their PhD and then do a dissertation and then go to business school and then keep going and going. And then they wake up and they're 50 and they have a degree in getting degrees. That is avoidance of real life. As I said, I kind of flirted with this idea in college. It's a very scary thing to, be a graduating senior. You know that the time is up of being, being devoid of any responsibility. And I thought, maybe I should go to law school. Maybe I'll give myself a few more years to kind of cushion and figure out what I really want to do. And then I told myself, no, Julie, you're just kicking the can down the road. And it's going to be worse for you if you keep avoiding real life. Go out, go face it, and be a real person. I want to play for you 2 clips that prove this point of this symbiotic relationship where students and professors help each other live in this make-believe place. Students enroll and take these crazy classes by these wannabe professors who teach all this dumb stuff to live in, to be a professor and live in their own fantasy land. And then those professors in turn dole out good grades. There's huge grade inflation, make the students feel great, and tell the students, and this is the point of the clips, just how wonderful they are. Let's listen first to Joe Biden speak at Harvard's class day back in 2017.
But in order to fill your destiny, class of 17, it's absolutely essential for you to engage in the world around you. Engage just like you did here on Harvard's campus. And I learned about you lying down in front of Memorial Chapel to insist that Black Lives Matter, or seeing Harvard University dining service workers through their strike, standing with them in a fight for better health care, or joining the hundreds of thousands who came together to take part in a women's march, or the science march, or the climate march. You must maintain that determination and commitment to making things better once you leave this campus, because as I said, you're the most engaged, tolerant, talented generation in our history.
Now let's listen to Hillary Clinton speak at Yale's class day in 2018.
We're living through a time when fundamental rights, civic virtue, freedom of the press, even facts and reason are under assault like never before. But we are also witnessing an era of new moral conviction, civic engagement, and a sense of devotion to our democracy and country. So here's the good news. If any group were ever prepared to rise to the occasion, it is you, the class of 2018. You've already demonstrated the character and courage that will help you navigate this tumultuous moment. And most of all, you've demonstrated resilience.
Why would you want to leave that? Why would you want to leave a place where you can avoid the real world, avoid paying anything? And by the way, with the student loan forgiveness, you really can avoid paying anything, getting good grades, and having people constantly tell you how wonderful and great they are even when they don't know you. President Biden and Hillary Clinton, when they are waxing eloquent about the tolerance and great character and resilience of the graduates, they don't know the graduates. They don't know them personally. How do they know really the character of those people? They don't. But again, that's not the point. It's the I'll make you feel good and you make me feel good. Also, at universities, there are so many awards and grants that are given nowadays. It's actually amazing. I was stunned when I went to college. I didn't realize just how many of these things they are. There are so many, like you don't even realize you're entering into an award or a prize giving contest. But they go through all these student essays and they give you this money and they give you these grants. And by the way, it sounds like a great thing and it's certainly a great opportunity if you use it well, but it just fuels this want to stay in Never Never Land. And it fuels this culture that universities have created where they want to make their students feel good instead of actually making them good. The point of a really good education is not to make your students have high self-esteem, but to really criticize them when necessary, to be hard on them, to make them better, not just dole out good grades and compliments and grants and awards, but to create really actually competent people, both academically and with regard to their virtue. And need I say more about how much that is not happening today? Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the subscribe button down below so that you can stay notified every time I post a new video. You're also welcome to email me at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from listeners, and I do respond to mail. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.